going to discuss various topics. First of all, we are going to discuss and trying to understand what is privacy, and also after that, what about the 27701 standard, and a little bit more about how the standard has been structured, and what are the expectations from the organizations wherein they are implementing these privacy information systems, and how to determine the various controls. So all those aspects we will touch. Further, very important for any privacy regulation or data protection frameworks. So we need to consider the privacy elements. What kind of a privacy elements involved in this, entire regulation. Um, and the basic privacy principles, because nowadays everyone most of the countries having their own privacy laws and regulations and data protection also, but there are very common elements any privacy standard touch upon. So what are those, and further the implementation steps, how any organization wants to get comply or get certification basis on this ISO 27701. What are the implementation steps involved? And last and final, we answer all your questions. Before start, I would request everyone, I mean, if you have any questions, you just type on the Q&A section, and end of the session, we will try to answer all your questions. Let's begin. What is privacy? Because last couple of years, I mean, last 4 to 5 years back, the people started, all of a sudden started, at least, talking about privacy. Everyone talks about the privacy. I think thanks to GDPR, it gives that kind of, it is given such kind of a visibility for this privacy. And surprisingly, yes, by the time most of the countries are already having this privacy acts and privacy regulations, but the way the GDPR actually emphasized on the requirements of this, privacy, it's sure shot, it's got into the limelight. Okay, so let us understand some basic principles, or the parameters which applicable for the privacy. If I talk about the privacy, I feel it's a right to be alone, right? I mean, as a personal right to be alone, and I don't want any kind of interference or intrusion into my privacy. So I would say the freedom from interference or intrusion. It's as per my understanding, I call it the privacy, and also I have all the rights to be alone. I don't want anyone to come inside my the specific boundary. Um, Ability of an individual to seclude their information, yes, obviously, because I don't want some information to be given to anyone, obviously, whether it could be my personal data, I mean personal information, like anything like the health information, or maybe my financial information. I have to decide my own, what I may can share, and I don't want to share with anyone. The state of being free from public scrutiny, yes, obviously, because because the state of the public scrutiny, I don't want to, people look at me, I mean, the crowd, the public. So it is generally happens with a lot of times, we also hear the news, the celebrities, they got into this kind of situations, and really they annoyed, So I mean, anything. It's not about only the data. Even I want to be alone. I want to enjoy myself. I mean, I don't want somebody to interfere in my life. I mean, not playing with my data, not playing with my information. So all these are. I felt this is my privacy. This is a boundary. So basically. As a general, lot of times I also heard people talks about data privacy and security, and too often the term security and privacy people are using interchangeably, but I can see the clear difference between the data security and the data privacy. Sometimes I understand that difficult to distinguish between the security and the privacy, but according to me, whereas security controls can be met, I mean, without also satisfying privacy considerations. If you don't consider privacy, you don't give any you can still, any organization can implement the security controls within the organization without touching the privacy elements. But when any organization talks about the privacy, privacy can be achieved with the help of the security is also part of that, right? It's a subset. I would say data security is a subset of data privacy, because without data I mean the compromise. So mainly the important thing is that what I want to explain here, the data security can be sometimes alone we can implement that security controls by deploying some kind of restrictions on the data which people can access, and the data privacy is something like defining who should access the data and policies, etc. And so far that's the reason, when the new security standards coming up, nowhere I can see the privacy requirements within the standards. So it's always talks about the process and the policies to protect the data, right, from different various threats. But at the same time, it never talked about the privacy in the security standards. But in the privacy regulations or the privacy frameworks, whether it is the GDPR, whether it is the HIPAA, whether it is the California Act, or the DPBA, Data Protection Bill, and everywhere when the privacy is coming, definitely there is element of security is also mentioned there. So it means the privacy can be achieved if you have to have the security. Without that, it may not be independent. Okay. So the privacy concerns are impossible to address basically without first deploying effective security practices. In my other words, I can say privacy limits the access, whereas security is the process or the application for limiting that access, right? Um, and yeah, I mean, and the way around is security protects the data and privacy protects the identity. So, in a example, when we purchase any mobile, not purchase. I mean, when you download, most of the time we clearly understand. Sometimes, when we download one application, it generally asks for the prompted for accepting the terms and conditions, and also access to certain information which is stored in your phone. Maybe it could be the contacts and the location, or even the sometimes it is the photos. I don't know why they require the photos, but however, generally the some applications ask for this. Once you decide as an user to grant that permissions to this app, now is the responsibility of this data security or the protecting the privacy of the data is lies with that organization, right? That app is asked permissions, you given the permissions, now the data is there with them. the organization. So it is their responsibility. Now just imagine, in such conditions, is one of their kind of any internal employee or internal some developers, anybody of that app turned around, sold the information. And if they sold that information, somebody within the organization, they sold that information, that's what you have given to them. And he maybe that's one part. And the second one is when it gave it to the some third parties or some marketing companies without your permission, that would be a violation of your privacy, right? If that application maker, I mean that organization, suffer any kind of a breach, it means what is that happening here? Exposing your information to some dark webs or the cyber criminals. That is another violation, right? That's another violation of your privacy. So if you see this context, it is definitely there is a security breach, security failure. So if there is any security failure, the organization handling any kind of information of the personals, definitely that also impact the privacy of the users, right? So in both examples which are given, whether the internal person is sold the data which you shared with them is sold to somebody, or maybe someone outside attacker, they breached into their systems and taken the data. In both cases, your privacy is at stake. So that's what exactly the privacy and the security, the data security and data privacy. And sometimes people also data protection. Yes, data protection is also another terminology people generally use. If you see the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, data protection. So, we don't need to much confuse about this. The privacy is always related to the personal information, and the limiting the access, and it defined the boundaries. Who should have what. Okay. And the security is mainly to protecting the data from any kind of attacks. It's from the internal or external by putting a lot of mechanisms or tools and apply various logical restrictions and physical restrictions. So there are so many things will come under the security. So in the latter stages, surely we can discuss. Now, yes, what is PII? The personal identifiable information. So this is all about the privacy. Everywhere the privacy comes, generally that some people call it as a personal information, some people call it as a PIA data, some people call it as data elements, so data subjects, data principles. So there are so many various regulations, various geographical regions. The way they interpret it is different, but as a overall, we need to understand what exactly privacy is applicable for what kind of a data, what kind of information. So let us look into that. What is PII? The personal identifiable information. It is as defined in the the various standards. It's any representation of information that I mean, it's a little technical, but any representation of the information, it permits to identify the individual to whom the information applies, applies. It's reasonably referred as either directly, in fact, directly or indirectly. It is a personal identifiable information. So let me make it more simpler. Directly identifies an individual. For example, my name and my address. I mean, my name, Vamsi Krishna. Okay, Vamsi Krishna from so and so address. My Aadhaar card number in India, and any national ID number. So all these are my directly identifies an individuals. Yeah, and in sometimes by which an agency intend to identify specific individuals, so they need some more information, like the same name, that there may be two people, right? There are a lot of ways, Ram, Krishna. Now there are hundreds of people are there. So if you need to identify the specific person, you may need to add some kind of data, other data elements, which is connecting with the respective specific person. So anything like the gender and the medical. If you get into the hospital and if you say, okay, Krishna is, I mean, there is this some specific issue, the health issue, who is so people can identify that. It needs to be, it needs to conjunct with the other data elements, right? That is indirect identification. So basically these data elements may include the combination of the gender and the date of birth, and the geographic indication, like for example, okay, Mr. So and so X person from this specific location, and his age would be 40 years. So people can identify that. So this is something is a indirect identifications. Okay, and also additionally information permitting like the physical and online contacting for a specific individuals, that considered also personal identifiable information. This information generally can be maintained either physical, either paper or electronic, and any other media, right? So the if you look at this whole, one thing is that directly identifies an individuals. If you make it very simple, it directly identifies an individuals or uh, specific individuals in conjunction with some other data elements. So basis on this, whatever the elements which we called identifies, we are referring to that as a PIA information. Okay. Now let us some of the examples of linked. I mean, like if you see here examples of some of the PIAs, social security number, passport number, driver. All these are directly pointing to one single person, right? It's directly talking, referring to the single person. And some other cases wherein it's a combination of the linkable information considered for identifying the person. So okay. Now, any representation of the information, generally that identify the individuals, to whom the information applies, to be reasonably inferred as either direct or indirect. Okay. Other linkable information, as I just mentioned, the examples of non-personal. This is non-personal data, but includes not limited to that generalized data like the age range, maybe that 30 to 40, and information gathering from government bodies or any such census data, tax receipts. Collected through the various channels. So these are non-personal data, but still it is also sometimes called it's a non-personal data also, the PIA and non-PIA. Okay, some examples like the IP address, full masked IP address is non-personal data, but in some regulations we found they are also considering the IP address of the device where I am accessing, also considering as PIA information. So it depends on the what context we are discussing and which regulation, which geographical region we are talking. So there might be some little bit changes in the interpretation. Okay, so basically the PA which we are discussing, and you can see that the full name and all these are direct identifiable information, and other linkable information that is not directly identify the person, but if the combination of any 2-3 parameters, you can identify the the persons. Okay. Now, non-PII, what is then non-PII? Non-PII, as I mentioned, the statistics data or some kind of, tax receipts, all those are the age ranges, okay, the religions, all these are non-PII data, because it's a, lot of data is there. So you cannot directly identify any specific person. For example, For example, people say, it's okay, so and so age group members like so and so product or brand. So it is very generic. It is not very specific to a person. So these are actually non-PII. Okay. Yeah. Now we are trying to understand what is the privacy and what is the PII data and the difference between the data security and the data privacy. And now when we are getting into the more and more into the data privacy, what is the consequences of the breach? This is very important. So we are discussing the PII information. So one organization, the organization holding some PII information of the people. So if in case if there is any breach of that, the data privacy. So what would be the consequences? One, absolutely the financial loss, and definitely it could significant, the significant loss for the company due to this breach, right? And definitely the brand damage to the brand reputation. Can any breach can impact much more than just the short-term revenues, and also loss of intellectual property or loss of revenue, and I don't know, there is, and the damage, the reputation damage can be catastrophic, because you lost the trust of the investors, customers, and public due to this kind of a breach. And there are a lot of hidden costs also, like again the law, the suits. Somebody is file a case, and you have to fight for the case against that one, and also the investigations and also other penalties. So that loss is very huge. So we cannot very clearly distinguish. Some of the examples which I can provide to you here, this is some data which we gathered. So this is some kind of, it's not the end. There is hundreds of examples are there that later a lot of data breaches, the security breaches information is available. So this is one of the some of the cases we found. 45% of the organization, one compromised account. I mean, 45% of the organizations. I mean, it's almost off. Yeah, and the cost of the breach is 3.92 million. My God, it's too much. Yeah. Involved use of stolen credentials. This is where I'm again, I just emphasizing the privacy. You want to protect the privacy. So before that, I mean, along with that, you should have the proper security controls also, like the stolen credentials. It means this is also, one of the control which we need to understand and implement. So malicious attacks and everything is common. Again, it is again parallel. It goes with the security. So these are some of the data are every time published by the topmost survey companies. So when you look at this, it means it's definitely, it's really the for me it's really scary, because 50% of the organization are getting into this kind of breaches. So it's very dangerous, right? No, I mean, that's one of the reason. That's one of the reason. There's a lot of lot of various countries. The is it a regulatory or a statutory, and industries? There are a lot of regulations are coming up. So what some of the few of the I would like to highlight here. Now most of the people might be aware. In India is also there is a data protection bill, and anytime it come as one of the act, the personal data protection, and also most of the people are familiar with general data protection regulations, and there is a California Consumer Privacy Act, HIPAA, health insurance. I mean, again, there is a privacy rule here. In the HIPAA, there is a security and the privacy rule. I guess I feel that I think the HIPAA is one of the first the act which talks about both the given the equal equal weightage to the privacy and the security. In the HIPAA Act, there is a privacy rule and there is a security rule. Again, there is Children's Online Privacy Protection Act and Brazilian. So these are, not limited. Just see, every country is having their own privacy acts. Australia is having the Privacy Act. It's almost 1988, and Brazil 1999, 1990, and I mean, what is Germany is having 2017 Federal Data Protection Act, and France is having it. Indonesia, Philippines, as of 2000, the Republic Act. I mean, the called as the Data Privacy Act 2012. So every country is having their own data protection acts or specific regulations. That's very important to understand here. Okay. Um, when it comes to the India, yes, there is a act earlier, the Information Technology Act, and that's reasonably covered certain personal data rules, information rules. They call it privacy rules in 2011. There are some specific provisions to protect the personal data and other data privacy requirements. But now we are, eagerly waiting for the final the final Data Protection Act. Okay. There are various, if you see here, like when we are discussing about the HIPAA or some other things, it means what is very specific to this. There are some sector specific laws that are governing the data collection in the, like for example, in the banking industries or healthcare industries or any other industries, communication industries. There is another act is e-communications. So it means what is happening. It's not only with respect to the as a whole country or the region, even the sector specific, the privacy, the privacy rules are also there. The privacy regulations is also there, right? Sector specific. Now, as I mentioned, India is in the middle of the comprehensive legislation for the data privacy, and as we discussed, the Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 is already there. Maybe in this bill actually completed, but anytime it passed in the provisions in the Parliament, and it become the act. Now. Yeah, right. Requirements of compliance with this privacy. So what we are discussing about the basic information and what is the requirement of compliance for this privacy. When any customer of any organization provide their information, okay, they entrust them with personal data which can be used against them if it falls into the wrong hands. That's why the data privacy data privacy needs to be there to protect those customers, but also the companies and their employees from any security breaches. Complying with this data privacy regulations is very important. It's not just because of the sensitive information can be misused in case of the data breach occurs, but also because there are a lot of laws which enforce this data privacy compliance. That's what we discussed a few slides back, right? Very important as an organization, as a business owner, why you need to think of the privacy, because it also helps the organizations, the businesses. Okay, data, if there is a data breach, it entirely kill your business, right? Already we have checked, there are so many breaches are happening, and the minimum cost of the the one of the data breach cost would be 3.92 millions, which can be it can be easily avoided if you have the well-placed systems to protect the data and maintain the privacy, right? Very important. It's one is you have to save yourself. Second, definitely protecting the your customers' privacy, whichever business you are into. So the customers is very important, right? I mean, in such case, as mentioned before also, if there is a data breach, can lead to, I mean, the valuable theft of, valuable customer information, and definitely which can, negatively impact the owners of the data. I mean, your customers, right? And probably the hacker can, whoever stolen the data can use all that information to commit various crimes. So, like for example, if it is a credit card and identity theft of the credit card, and do some fraudulent activity, fraudulent purchases through the credit card. So, very important. Protecting your customer privacy is also very important. Why you need to think of this privacy regulations and data security regulations? One is protect your business first. That's very important. If there is a breach, then the people will lose their trust on your business, and they will not going to do the business with a company. They are not really serious about the security and the privacy. Second, as a responsible business owner, you also, because you are into the business because of your customers, and we are responsible to protect the customer privacy at all the cost. Do we have enough systems to do that? Yes, that's very important to understand. And definitely there is a brand value, because when you have when you need to, you want to avoid data breaches, and if you are taking this seriously, okay, and sometimes the breaches can damage the entire company reputation and the brand value, right? Okay, when the customers actually voluntarily give their information, the data to the companies, and definitely they expect it to be well protected. Am I right? If it is not, then customers will lose all trust they have on your company and brand, which will decrease the brand value. That's all. You are going in 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, few years, you will be out of the business, right? And very important, when you implement the specific the regulations within the organization, definitely it supports the code of ethics. Okay, most of the organizations have a code of ethics in place, but as we know, most of the time, it's not really implemented 100%. But yes, having this kind of a systems, definitely it will helps to at least maintain certain levels ethical practices. Without this, it would be it won't be able to stay in the, you won't be stay in the business for long term. Okay. Further example, one of those kind of a policy states that the confidential information needs to be shared or handled responsibly and only used for the business purposes. This is what kind of policy. It's a kind of a code of ethics. Whatever data you have, you use it very responsibly, handle it very responsibly, right? So this is very important. Further, also the competitive advantage, the competitive lot of because a lot of surveys is happening. So anybody asks you the simple question, are you concerned about your privacy? Definitely we will say yes, right? And now the awareness among the people are also increased. So a lot of people are really concerned about how their data is being managed, used, and handled, right? There is a survey. Around 79% of the people, 79 to 80% of the people are very somewhat concerned about how the companies use their data, right? And also the similar way, some people also believe that they don't have much control over their data also. If your business complies with the data privacy regulations, this will give you the competitive advantage over companies that don't take that kind of privacy seriously. It's up to you how you want to take this forward. So when we are talking about the privacy, now we are getting into the getting into the privacy regulations. So how to meet these privacy regulations. So far we discussed about what is privacy and what kind of information fall under this category. What is the PII and why the organizations require this maintain this privacy, and are there any regulatory regulations across global level for various regions. They are pushing this data personal privacy, and also we try to understand the as a companies what kind of benefits you will get if you are implementing this privacy. If not, what kind of if the breaches happen, what kind of a consequences you fall, right? So now that's fine. Now how to meet this privacy, how to meet this privacy regulations. There should be some specific system. I mean, we have to have very logically, sequentially, sequential manner, right? I mean, having just an idea of, I want to be privacy compliant, it doesn't happen like that. You should have a proper strategy, proper plan, proper systems, a lot of resources to build that kind of systems, right? So it's again the privacy compliance if you want to achieve. So at least certain levels you should pass. Have a clarity. First one, develop the compliance strategy. What is your strategy about this compliance? Do you know where is the PIA in your organization? Do you have an idea of inventory of the PIA? Make it accordingly. Whether you are a controller or processor, we will discuss that, the PIA controller processor later stages. But yes, once you understand the data which you are holding, the processing, storing, transmitting, or destroying. So once you understand your company is handling some kind of the PIA, so make an inventory and have a control over that. Then establish proper policies and procedures, right? Implementation of documented system is also very important. And then finally, it comes to the compliance proof. I will explain. You see, if you don't have the, very good, overall the compliance strategy, you cannot accomplish accomplish that part, right? You can't hope to accomplish anything without a good strategies. The strategy needs to have a data privacy compliance at its core, while also comprehensive, measurable, and integrated. It should be very comprehensive. There is a, when you are developing this strategy, you should be knowing how to measure whether it is how it is progressing, and it should integrate with other elements of the organization also, right? So there should be proper develop compliance strategy. You can develop this with the help of high level. You can set up high level expectations and principles. It will followed with the appropriate documentations. You should have the proper documentation. Okay. Make sure while developing the strategy, make sure to define all kind of measures that to be taken to protect the personal data. Okay, so you should have the proper strategy. And sometimes if you are not in you don't have that in-house competency, probably you can hire some kind of subject matter experts in the field. And very important, make an inventory of all sensitive information. Whenever the personal data is collected, it needs to be properly tagged and inventoried. You see, the your company should have also need to provide a tracking method for all data that will make it easier to locate and protect. So it means you should have the proper idea what kind of a data is coming inside, how it the data is moving from one to one, and there should be proper tracking method. All of this definitely needs to be accordance to the legal standards. So you cannot you cannot use the data as you wish, because whenever you are following certain practices, you also needs to make sure it is legally adequate, appropriate. Okay, So this is also very important. And as I mentioned, the policies and procedures, policy procedure for data protection. So you should ensure, when we say the data protection, definitely the organization that comply with the data privacy regulations need to have to ensure integrity, again the confidentiality and the data availability with proper physical and technical and administrative safeguards, right? These safeguards needs to be very effective in detecting and stopping, defending any unauthorized access to the data, right? Also, it is very important for you to constantly monitor and access and update that security aspects to make sure there is no new threats. No threats can be met and dealt with this coming up. So you have to have a proper monitoring mechanism to deal with the new threats and manage it properly and efficiently. It is always, remember, it is a continuous process. There is no stop anywhere. If you are stopping, someone will move ahead, and if it is the malicious persons, then definitely there is a chance of attacking your systems. So you have to have a proper systems in place first of all, and regular monitoring has to be there, and there is a proper documentation needs to be there to either it is a knowledge sharing purpose or a more transparent way of performing your jobs, etc. Okay, and further further final is ready to further certification. Yeah, you see most of the regulations we receive, I generally receive the person calls, okay, we want GDPR certificate, we want HIPAA certificate. So you see, actually the point is all these are regulations. IT Act, is there any certificate? It is not a certifiable standards. All those are regulations. Everybody, the criteria, as per the criteria, whoever fall under that, they have to follow that regulation. If you are not following, then if there is any consequence, you have to accept that. But no one will come and give you, yeah, you are a GDPR certified company, you are a HIPAA certified company. No, it is a regulations, it's acts. As far as the criteria, as I mentioned, you have to follow that. But you have to have the proof of compliance. That's important. There is a difference between the certification and the compliance. Certification is a one piece of paper. You can put it on the somewhere. Somebody, they will come as a third party and they will give you, they audit you, they review, and they will give you some certificate you can hang on the wall. Certificate as on that particular day, what is your status. Compliance is a continuous activity. You always needs to be comply with these regulations. That's very, very important to understand. Okay, coming to the, so finally, end of the strategy, you prepared everything, fantastic, established the documents, established the implemented that proper systems, and finally either you want to get a reviewed by yourself, or some third parties come and prove that you are compliant fully, right? So this is basically the steps we will discuss.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Got it. Now we were able to see it. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, when we are talking about the privacy regulations is there, and every country is having their own privacy regulations. So Also, we understand how to meet the privacy regulation. So by having all these things, but still there is something is missing. You know what? A systematic method. There is a proper channel to meet all these requirements, and we need because we need something to refer properly, guide us, establish all these things in a very systematic manner without any ambiguity in the requirements, expectations. So that is where actually our privacy information management systems come into the picture, right? What is this privacy information management system? It outlines a framework. Please remember, outlines a framework for personally identifiable information, that is, we discussed already the PII controllers and PII processors to manage the data privacy. Again, what I'm saying, ISO 27701, abbreviated as PIMS, that's a Privacy Information Management System. It outlines a framework for personally identifiable information controllers and PII processors to manage their data privacy. Okay, the privacy management information management system, sometimes referred also information management systems, PIMS. Some people call it as a 27701. Now this is little extension. Most of the people, you might be aware about 27000. It's one of the best global standard, global ISO standard, which can applicable for any organization, any type of organization, particularly in the information security. It's the information security management system, right? There is a guidelines, ISO 27002. That's the information security management guidelines. First one is 27001 is the requirements, ISMS requirements. 27002 is the guidelines. So what is the relationship between this PIMS and 27001 ISMS? So there is a very good relation between these two, because as we discussed earlier, okay, that the privacy, without proper security, the privacy cannot be achieved. It means you want to achieve the privacy, so you should have the security in place, security systems in place, should be in place, sorry, yeah, should be in place. So the thing is that the 27001, the 27001 is more emphasized, takes care of the information security elements, and the PIMS 27701 takes care of the privacy elements. So these two go in hand, right? So the design, particularly the goal of this to enhance the when we say the extension for 27001, the design goal, the purpose of this to enhance your existing information security management system with additional requirements to establish, the maintain, continually improve the privacy systems. Okay, it's the extension. So it is information security is already there. Then you are extending that principles and everything, the standards to with respect to the privacy. That's all. So it will be very easy for those companies, since these two standards are significantly overlap in almost all the technical requirements. It is a very easy task for the organizations to get into this 27701 if they are already having adopted 27001. It's so easy for them. Okay, because most of the control requirements of both the standards is overlapping. So a lot of similarities is there, except few places, few controls you need to very specifically look after this, the specific requirements from the controller and processor wise. Otherwise, any organization who are already certified for 27001, they can implement, adopt these privacy systems as well and get certification. right? Now, yes, also there is a very important thing. There is a very important element, that is this 27701 directly relates to requirements normally we found in the GDPR. So in the standard, this standard is very new. This is published in 2019, right? So written with the intent to not only satisfy GDPR, even other privacy regulations across globe. So this is very generic standard. So most of the key principle, the crux of this standard is the good part of the standard is, when they developed this standard, when they are writing this standard, they considered almost all the privacy laws and acts applicable in various countries, and they taken that entire context and they abstract that, and they created a very generic standard. It's so good, to meet most of the regulations. If you are properly implementing this 27701 in your organization, it takes care of a lot of other regulations also. Okay. So, and they also provided, they also in the standard, they also provided the relationship between the GDPR and various articles. Most of the people know the GDPR is having 99 articles and 100 plus the recitals. So all articles, they are mapped with this, PIMS standard itself. Not only that, there are other frameworks also they mapped. So it is a so nice, standard to have it. And information, so mainly the focus is on the privacy. If it is a 27701, it is a privacy. 27001 is the information security, right? Now, this is where it is mentioned most of these things. This 27701, I always call it a PIMS, PIMS. So it talks three things. It's built on the three things. One is definitely there is a security. So as I mentioned, the privacy cannot be achieved if you don't have the proper security system. So by default, it takes care of the security as well. So that is where as I mentioned, 27,001 is the requirements and 27002 is the guidelines, the code of practice. The difference is the requirements always certifiable. I mean, this auditable things, and the code of practice is advisory. While auditing, we can consider those points, but it's not a auditable standard. Okay, and also there are various other standards is also there. When it comes to the privacy, yes, the 29100 is a privacy framework again in the ISO, but it is not a auditable standard. When I am saying auditable standard, it means the certain requirements we can audit, like any third party certification bodies can come and they validate, verify, validate and audit, and let's then confirms that yes, you are meeting the specific requirement and they can certify you. If you want to get a certification, then you have to adopt this 27701, the PIMS. But all other standards which you can see on the screen, these are like ISO 29001, 29100 and 29151, 29130. All these are guidelines, okay, code of practices. But organization, if they want to get a certification for the privacy, then they should ISO with the 27701. But in the 27701, they mapped the requirements with various other privacy frameworks also. As I mentioned already, the data protection, the general data protection regulation, the GDPR, they mapped direct and also other privacy regulations also. So it is such a very nice, built standard. It takes care of privacy and security in hand, right? Now, again, why this 27701? Again, as we were discussing, as you know, the personal information is everywhere and it's literally growing, very fast, exponentially. It's increasing, right? So informations are collected, processed, and stored, and even the transmitted in many forms, electronic, physical, or media. We don't know. We don't have any control over there, right? So within all types of organizations on a daily basis, I mean, every organization having this kind of information there every day, every organization collecting lot of information. They process it, they store it, they transmit it, different forms. It's happening very, it's growing also very exponentially, because without data, just imagine, everything is today the data information, what kind of a data you have, what kind of information you hold. This is matters for the business also. So it's not going away in at least near future. Uh, Organizations, definitely organization engaged in the process experience a competitive atmosphere and should be aware of the need to acknowledge and accept the responsibilities of their and held accountable for the effective handling of PII. The main reasons why the organization should seek this 27701 certification is to comply with not only the GDPR, even encounter, I mean, any pure cost when it comes to customers and supplier audits. Like, if the customers are, the customer wants to audit, and if you get certification, and there will be some relaxations on the auditing audits by suppliers and customers, right? Okay, and definitely the 27701 provides information on basically how the organization should manage and manage in the process the data to protect the privacy and personal identifiable information, right? This standard definitely improves the ISMS, and it also helps PAMS, accurately, right? The framework, this particular the standard serve as a guidelines to establish and implement, maintain and improvise the privacy systems. Also, these guidelines, this particular standard helps organizations understands the practical approaches that needs to be involved in the implementation of effective PIA, managing the PIA. So conformity, being a 27701 certified organization or implemented organization, enables your organization to assess, actually really treat and reduce the risk also, right? Reduce the risk to, because there is a proper systems in place, and we will also discuss the, when it comes to the implementation steps, I will also explain. So considering the advantages and implementing proper PAMS, IMS increase the need of the privacy during the recent years. Okay, definitely it is a very good competitive advantage for the business and business market, and also improve organization reputation having the good systems. Okay, and also definitely it helps you affect your customer satisfaction, and also it definitely it will increase the level of the trust towards your organization. Okay, and being certified against this 27701 may your clients definitely feel the happy, and they're more confident and confident about the data which they are actually sharing with you, and they feel it is in the safer hands, and it's secure, it's safe, everything, right? And also very important, the internal process wise, this kind of standards definitely bring the transparency within the organization processes and the procedures, how you maintain the integrity to your customers and the even your interested in some of the interested parties. So this is basically the advantage of this. Now when it comes to the main focus of as we're discussing, main focus of PMS is how an organization collects, stores and uses and arranges the personal identifiable information it is collecting from the individuals. Okay, so there are very strict regulations that governs this, the collection and use of PIA. That's very important. What exactly the standard talks about, and you know, PIA is, as we discussed earlier, PII is classified as any information that would help identify an individual, right? PIA, there are two types of organizations. One organization could be the PIA controllers, and the PIA processors are responsible for this legally collection of PIA and how it is handled. So this is very important. Okay, whether it is a PIA processor or a PIA controller, there should be a legal reason, lawfulness. That's what we will discuss in the next slide. There are this particular PMS put some kind of a governance on the collection and use of PII. That's very important to understand. And the protection of how as an organization and what ways you should protect this PII. Then what kind of a rights you are supposed to give it to the individuals who are actually sharing their data with you. This is very three important things, this particular standard thought. The collection and use of PI must have purpose. There should be always there is a purpose, of collection and use, right? Definitely, PI must be protected, and data subjects. I mean, the PI principles that data subjects is basically it's a GDPR terminology which I'm using, and but in the PIMS they always they referred it as a PII principles, have the right to erase, modify, and request the information where you are using them. So all these things they explained in the very sequentially in this PIMS standard. So you just understand. You read any other regulations. Always they talks about these only. Maybe the terminologies are different, the interpretation of the certain areas are different, but overall the entire data protection, data privacy, all the regulations in Acts talks about you should have a full control over the data which you are collecting and processing and working on the data of your customers. Again, that is a PIA data. How you are ensure the security of the data. Further, what kind of level of rights which you are providing to your the end users who are actually sharing that. So this is the main three things. So this is how it is, and let us discuss. Sorry. Yeah, I mean relationship with the GDPR. So basically, here there are some of the elements as we discussed more the European, actually, if the European, I think, yeah, they have this Data Protection Directive, DPD, 1995. After that, recent, yeah, the GDPR came into the picture. But however, the rapid technology advancements and globalization and various regions to failure to prevent various kind of fragmentation, the data protection across European unions, um, I feel the Data Protection Directive is failed to live up to some of the expectations. So then the EU decided to adopt or come up with the GDPR, whose purpose is the best described in the almost all the recitals in the recital 2 of this GDPR. Okay. It's very clearly mentioned in the GDPR, the regulation is intended to contribute to the accomplishment of an area of freedom, security, and justice, and of an economic union and economic and social progress. I mean, it's too lengthy. Yeah. So, though GDPR, the European Union is regain the people's trust when it comes to the handling their personal data, and definitely they would like to boost their digital economy across the EU internal market. Okay. Very important thing. If people are familiar with the GDPR, it's good. But otherwise, generally, it is basically there are two different broad parts in the GDPR. One is recitals, and one is articles. Articles and recitals. When it comes to the 27,001, as we just sorry, 27701. Here we are talking about the PII, personal identifiable information. In the GDPR that they mentioned about personal data, and here we called it is a PII principle. They call it is a data subject. The data subject is the individual user. You can consider like all our individual users, and here we term as PIA controllers and processors. Whoever processing the data or whoever processing the PIA information, um, they call it the PIA processor. But if you look at the GDPR, they call it the data controller and data processors. Okay. Now, GDPR implementation is mandatory because whoever has fallen to the particular criteria located in the the organization located in the EU and the outside of the EU, but whoever the processing the personal data of EU citizens, it's mandatory for them to comply with the GDPR as per the guidelines. And when it comes to the 27701 is a international standard. It's not only restricted to one jurisdiction or one geographical location. It is applicable applicable for regardless of the area, right? And moreover, it's a very generic requirements. It can be interpreted in the context of local legislations. I mean, it can be customized as per the local legislations. So, for example, when we do implementation of, I mean, auditing the GDPR, the first question comes: if any organization, what kind of the local regulations is applicable? But in the GDPR, there is no chance of incorporating the local regulations. The GDPR itself, it is a regulation. It is a regulation. Any organization want to comply with that, they read that standard guidelines as per I mean, as per the GDPR, whatever they mentioned. But in the 27701, when before finalizing the scope, generally the organization should ask, okay, this is ongoing. I need to identify my customer privacy requirements and the local privacy requirements, local area. I mean, local any laws is applicable for the data privacy. For example, if you are implementing 27701 in India, then according to the Indian jurisdiction, we have to identify what is the applicable privacy regulations here. What is my customer requirements about the privacy from my organization? Accordingly, I have to define the context. Okay. If the same 27701, if somebody from the Philippines, if they are actually want to get certified, when they're trying to implement, they have to identify what is the local regulation. That is whether the data protection bill of 2012 will be applicable for them. They have to consider what is that act talking about, all this stuff. So if it is a Singapore different. So the best part of this is more generic requirements. It can be adopted by any organization across the global, and also the customized as per their local jurisdiction and local requirements. And very important, the application, it's voluntary. I mean, it's not like since it's not a regulation, it's guidelines, right? It's requirements, it's guidelines. So it is voluntary standard. So any company can adopt that. So it's up to them. Definitely, I would say, definitely complying with this control requirements of whatever mentioned in the 27701 standards serves as a evidence that the company is having, the organization is having some good privacy information systems in place. Whether maybe it will help whether it is a GDPR, whether it is any other regulations to fulfill their requirements also. Okay. And there are, when it comes to the GDPR and 27701, definitely there are cases where the multiple controls are covered, specific requirements, and it's overlapped. Some of the requirements GDPR also it's overlapped, but there is a difference of terminologies. But otherwise, it's a good. I mean, there is overlapping between these. Okay. For example, it's mapping some kind of 6.13. I mean, it's in the 27701 controls. It mapped with the Article 33 of the GDPR something. These controls provide guidance on management of information security incident. For example, 6.13 talks about the information security incident. At the same time, the Article 33 of the GDPR presents requirements of notification of the data breach to supervisory authority. I mean, like this, here it is very generic. It's generic in the sense you should have the information security incident management practices. So if there are any kind of incidents, incident could be the data breach or could be the non-availability of the assets and everything, you have to identify the authority to provide that notification. This is what 27701 talks about. At the same time, when it comes to the GDPR, it very specifically mentions that whenever there is a data breach, you should inform, notify the supervisory authority. So this is how actually it is mentioned. Okay. As I mentioned, it talks about the personal data, wherein 27771 talks mention personal identifiable information and data subject, here the data principal. Other than that, both are some compatible standards, definitely. Okay, so what is my opinion of this relationship is between the GDPR and the 27701. Not only GDPR, even tomorrow, if there are so many other regulations, if some company is implementing this 27770, it will be very easy for them to comply with the local regulations also. This is the my opinion. Okay. Now, yes, it is some kind of representation. Compliance challenges, whatever I mentioned, you see, that's what I'm trying to say. Too many regulatory requirements to juggle. So basically, 27701, it definitely includes annexer controls containing a lot of operation controls of the standards and mapped against relevant requirements from the GDPR and GDPR or some other regulations for as a controllers and the processors. This mapping is just an example of how the privacy regulations can be operationalized in the ISO framework. In addition, additional mappings with other regulations become available. I mean, we can make sure you can always compare, with other regulations also. Okay. The operational controls from the standards is already there, can be it can be transferred directly from the regulatory implementation, so you can implement directly. Okay, so this is universal framework. I would call it a global framework, the 27701, right? So it definitely it will allow organizations to make sure they can operationalize that particular controls without reinventing the wheel. I mean, if you adopted this kind of a global standard and as per your company business, you may require, you are operating from US, you are operating from the UK, and you are operating from the India. So as an organization, one single organization, you have to work on 3 different regulations, right? The US, there is a different California Act is there, and EU, it is a kind of a GDPR is there, and in India there is a Data Protection Act will be coming. So is it really possible to, having multiple regulations in the multiple contexts? So when you adopt this kind of a global universal framework, it will be easier to adopt all these things, and that too very structured way. There is a systematic way. This point number 1. Okay, map regulation to ISO controls. This is already we're discussing. Then when you are complied with respect to the controls, and regulation by regulation conducting the assessments is also, it's very costly affair for the organizations, right? So more and more privacy regulations, definitely, because whenever you are entering into the new market, you have to follow their local privacy regulations. There is no doubt in that. Okay. So whenever there is more and more privacy regulations come into the force from the various locations or various jurisdictions, to definitely as an organization, you feel the pressure to provide the required evidences to the compliance authorities. Okay, it will increase definitely. But at the same time, the cost of regulatory certifications, the cost of certifications will increase. Okay, every regulation calls to own unique, audit, right? So when we are talking about such kind of a situation, when you implement outlining this kind of operation controls, PMS also, like the PIMS also outlines it's kind of a universal compliance framework to audit against, and potentially that certification and for multiple regulatory requirements, right? So it is important to recognize that there is, as I mentioned earlier, there is no official GDPR certification. Okay, for there is no such kind of a certification. But when you adopt alignment between this PIMS with the GDPR or PIMS with other regulatory compliances, definitely it will be useful for you to at least comply with the things and implement proper compliance control. It will definitely, when some authority will ask you to provide the control compliances evidences, it will be easier for you to provide them, right? So this is very important to understand here. Finally, you see, everybody says I'm compliant, right? I'm compliant, I'm security compliant, I'm data, privacy compliant, but where is the proof? So, I mean, the point is that certificate of compliance is required. Somewhere, you should focus on the certificate of compliance as a, but when it comes to the regulations, it's very difficult. As I mentioned, there is no certificate, right? So this 27701 provide that, third party assessment and whether your entire organization business services, how you implemented this privacy, and the third party auditors can come and they can validate and they can provide you the certificate of compliance. So that can be utilized to as a showcase, as a proof of evidence that you have the best practices in the organization as far as the privacy is concerned, right? So one more important thing is this PIMS, even though it is a standard, but without 27701, no company can take this 27701 certification. So before this or along with this, you should also implement information security standard also. So it means the organizations who are already certified for ISMS can easily adopt and take this implement and get certified basis on the standard. If the companies are not 27,000 certified already, then if they want to get a privacy certification, they have to have the information security also. It means both the standards you are supposed to implement, implement and establish at the same time. Okay, then only it is available. If some companies, they are not information security certified company, but they want to only have this PAMA certification, it is not feasible, right? It is not, because it's a extension of 27001 certification. So you must have the 27001 certificate initially, or at least, yeah, certification has to be there. So this is what it is, and definitely having the this compliance increase, definitely it increase the importance of the certification to the standard. So basically, while since um, uh, all companies, while not all companies and organization need to answer certifications, but having this certification is definitely gives your partners and vendors, especially when they are handling sensitive high volume information, right? So definitely it will help your organization as well. Now, this is a support compliance with GDPR and other data protection laws and regulations. Yes, that's what we discussed so far. And improve structure and focus of data privacy management. This is very, very important. Okay, because when I'm talking about 27701, it covers the requirements of what you may find in a general data protection regulation, controls to help organizations to logically collect and process PII. This will also allow, similar to 27001, it's extension of 27001, and it will provide control objectives and controls for your for the organizations to consider implementation. It's a very structured way what you are supposed to implement, right? And embed personal data management in your organization culture, because it's not a any kind of it's a very structured framework. It's a management standard. So definitely it will change the organization culture, and also you can identify the risk of your organization and risk based approach while implementing this data privacy. Okay, Definitely, one of core element principle of the ISO standards is the always it's a continual improvements to adapt the new changes inside outside of the organization. So it gives you the structure and framework to adopt the new things within the organization. Okay, and definitely it's integrated with other leading standards also. So there are a lot of benefits of this PAMS. Okay, now we are getting into the so basically now so far what we discussed is we started with what is the privacy, the fundamental question, right to be alone. I don't want to disclose my data with anyone without my permission. Okay, no one supposed to enter into my the enter into my space. So that's what I call we called it is a privacy. Then uh, then what is a PII? What is a privacy, personal identifiable information? We discussed that, and also fundamentally, what is the difference between the security and privacy? We discussed later on. Why the privacy is so important? That's also we discussed. It's with customer trust, brand value, reputation, this that, and why the everyone is focusing on the the privacy. So we also understand various regulations. They are actually emphasizing to implement these privacy systems within the organizations. How it is beneficial. That is also we discussed. Further, we also discussing about various regulations and how systematically we can manage, what to consider while implementation. We discussed that also, right? Then we gradually we understand the benefits of this privacy compliances, and also while you want to implement, once you the organization decide what the minimum they should have, the kind of strategies and the control over the PA, etc. We discussed that part. Then having this controlled manner, you want to implement the privacy, then that's where exactly the 27701 come into the picture, because it is a global standard. Further, the what basis the 27701 is built on, the security, the privacy, and other regulations. What is the importance of this, and what is the benefits of this PAMS, and what is the focus points on the PAMS? This is what so far we discussed, and we also discussed about the relationship with the GDPR, and having the certification is how good for the organization. Okay, now yeah. mm, I think the answer is already given. Yeah, sure, we will give you the answers, but yes, owner of the data, who is collecting? Okay, the controller. You see, the point is the data, the PIA principles. When we are talking about the PIMS, one is there are three elements which definitely we will cover in the next few slides also. That point I will explain to you, because the definitions of the PIA controller and PIA processor and PIA principles is given in the other slides. I will come to that point. Now let us understand when we are talking about the PIMS. Now we understood very clearly. Yes, we need PIMS in my organization, because I want to make sure I have a good, robust privacy systems along with my security. So my clients are happy, I'm happy, and I can meet multiple regulations by having these good standards in place. That's all. Right now, getting into the structure. The structure is very simple, but yes, for understanding the structure better way, you should know the 27001 standard. I didn't mention. I will just want to put up the 27001 is having two parts. That is, ISM is having two parts. One is the management system, management system. Standard requirements, okay, management system standard requirements, and sorry, yeah, management system standard requirements, and also there is a annexure A controls, 114 controls, which are very good best practices while implementing the information security within the organization. Okay. Now, when it comes to the privacy management standard, definitely it is an extension of 27001. So most of the controls which already we have mentioned, the management level controls, management system controls are just whenever you are talking about the security, you have to just replace the security with security plus privacy requirements. For example, in the 27001, you people please put your question and answers in the question and answer section, please. So we will answer all your questions at the end of the session, because please, you can, instead of chat messages, please put it in the question and answer. So we will answer all your questions. If you are not able to answer right now because due to the time constraint, probably we can also send you a mails, because we have your email ID. So we can have we can share the information on the mail also. Thank you very much. Now, when it comes to yes, when it comes to the Annexure A controls, information security, and when it comes to the privacy information management standard, there is a lot of overlapping is there. So, but the context, the scope, when we are talking about information security, the first question comes, what is your customer expectations from you regarding their information, regarding the security? That is the question in this 27,000. In the similar way, in the PAMS, we have to think, what is my customer expectations about their data privacy, right? In 27,000, it talks about when you are implementing such kind of a standards, please make sure your local regulations, local regulatory requirements with respect to the data security. So in the PMS, it talks about understand the data privacy requirements locally. So this is how actually it is happens. So that's what I mentioned when we mentioned about the overlapping, or it is very easy for those organizations who are actually already implemented 27,001. If they want to implement PMS, it will be very easy for them, because they know the structure. So wherever the possibility, the overlaps, it is already there. Okay. Like you may be aware, if somebody knows 27,000, this is exactly the requirements. PA general context of the organization. Basically, context of the organization is nothing but defining the interested parties of the, for example, as my organization is there, who is my interested parties, who is very interested in my internal security and privacy systems. I have to define the boundary for my organization. You see, whichever organization, because this ISO 27001 or ISO 27701 is any organization across the global level, any size, any complexity, any type of organization, like whether it is a manufacturing, whether it is a service, whether it is any type of organization can adopt this, because we are talking about two things. One is the security, one is the privacy. So security, because nowadays, because of the globalization and because of lot of dependency on the data, the information, and it is on the media, electronic or physical, and it is depends on a lot of assets, IT assets. So always there is a possibility of the security breaches, right? I mean, how to protect that my assets, my infra from any kind of attacks or not. So this is very, very important thing. At the same time, so is this, just imagine how many companies are not at all. I mean, this is a hypothetical question, but the question is how many companies are not having not having any dependency on the IT. Nowadays, every company is an IT-enabled company, whether it is their website, whether it is their internal applications, whether the data they are storing somewhere, whatever it is, whether it is a manufacturing, whether it is a service-oriented, whether it is some pharmaceutical, it's total IT-enabled companies. At the same time, the privacy also. The privacy is I'm handling data, my employees' data, my customers' data, my some other data. The personal information also I'm handling. Oh, so is it not my requirement, my the expectations from my customers that am I using protecting their data or not? I'm responsible. That's what we so far we discussed, right? Every organization having some kind of a data information, whether it can be a private, personal identifiable information, whether it can be any sensitive information. I'm having it. I'm holding it, right? So, who all are that kind of interested parties? What is their expectations as an organization? So that is what generally the contest, and the basis on that I can define my the boundary for my organization. I mean logical and physical boundary for my organization. Just I want to become a privacy compliant organization. It's not happened because of if I'm thinking. There is a lot of dependency with other departments, other interested parties, other regulatory bodies. So I need to understand, yes, I want to achieve this. So what is my dependency and how it interconnects each other? So this kind of, the discussions happens at this, contest of the organization. Having an idea is good, like, defining the things, but without any organization, that's any ISO standards, the first thing comes leadership. If the management is not committed, if they don't have the clear strategy, clear planning, if they are not committed, this never success in any organization, because ultimately the management is the people who spend money, who drive this, define the objectives or the policies. So it is a top-down approach. Always it should be it is a top-down, because without top people are not committed, lower level people, I mean the middle management, they can't do anything because everything comes from the top. Whether do we have the leaderships? I mean that's very important for their commitment towards the security, their commitment towards the privacy is there. It should be there. That is what actually and also the proper roles, the proper responsibilities, accountability. I'm saying, oh, I want to get privacy compliance, but there is no privacy officer in the organization. So who will take the responsibility of that? So all these things we need to really understand. That's what exactly the standard is also talks about very systematically. One is the context of the organization is boundary. What you want to achieve? Who is your interested parties? Then do you have the management commitment? Then what is your strategy? What is your high level plan? And do you have defined proper roles and responsibilities? Right? Then the planning, then the planning things, right? So how to make this kind of plans? Identify the risk assessment, risk to your privacy, risk to your security. So having the robust risk management, risk assessment system and risk treatment process. So whatever the risks are identified with respect to the privacy, that you can put very specific controls. For example, if there is a risk of, okay, you understand while performing this, while conducting what kind of a risk I'm having with respect to the privacy. Right? Okay, the organization is not collecting the data, but not taking any consent from the people. So anytime the people can raise this concern. It's a risk for my organization. So do I need to put a system of taking the consent before collecting their data? Otherwise, if I'm not doing, is there any legal consequences? Yes, then it is a risk for my organization. So that kind of a proper analysis has to happen with respect to the privacy and identify what kind of a controls I can implement. Then definitely the support is something like when I'm identifying the risks with respect to the privacy, then the support is the system has to be in place, the resources has to be in place, the proper documentation has to be in place. That's where actually we just discussed it, right? The policy, procedure, implementation, and the documentation, it has to be there. Otherwise, it is on the fly. If there is nothing documented properly, then it is very difficult to implement, because it may not transfer that knowledge from one to one. Because entire the culture, how you want to build the culture. So it should be properly transmitted from one to one. The top to bottom. So each and every corner of the organization. So all these things only feasible if you have the good supporting functions within the organization. Then operations, and definitely operations is the implementation, basically whatever as per your documented systems, like whether it is a policy, whether it is a procedure, whether it is a practice which you define, you have to implement that, evaluate how it is performing, and finally if you find out any gaps in that while implementation, you can act upon. So generally it is generally what we call, it's a PDCA, plan do check act. Okay, so this is very systematically we have to do that. As we mentioned, in the security also, 27,001, if somebody knowing the 27,000, all these are various controls with respect to the security. But here also, in the PIMS also, wherever it is possible, no, it is given some additional guidelines, but it is overall, it is touch upon all the information security policies, human resource, how to protect security in the human resource, asset management, access control, logical access control, physical access control, key management, operation security, communication security, new developments, supplier relationship security, incident management, security. All these things very systematically explained, given in these standards. Wherever possible, wherever there is a privacy, they also included that privacy guidelines also here along with the security guidelines. Additionally, there are two things. One is additional controls or guidance for PII controllers and PII processors. Okay. Now, what is these controls? Conditions for collections and processing, obligations towards PII principles, privacy by design and privacy by default, compliance. So this is what exactly we need to discuss. So let us understand PII principles, the persons who provide personal data for processing. Okay. PII controller is determines the purpose and means of PII processing, and PII processor is carries out processing of PII on behalf of the controller or according to its instructions. So basically, you see, as I mentioned, data subject in the GDPR, like I am the person. If I am the person here, I am the PII principal. I am the owner. I am the owner of my data, right? I have all the, if I want, I can, with my consent, you take my data. If I want, I can share my data with anyone. Okay. The persons who provide personal data for processing, the principals, the data subjects is a principals. Whenever you are reading this PIMS standard, wherever it is mentioned the principals, so it is persons who provide personal data for processing. Second, PII controller. The controller determines the purpose and means of PII processing. So when I am actually collecting the data, there is a conditions also for this. Okay. Determine the purpose, why I am taking this data, how I will process this data. Okay. This is the PII control. Forget about the PII every time. The principals is the owner. I am individuals. Okay. I can provide my data for any purpose. Controller, he determines the purpose of why we are collecting this data and how to process the data. Basis on my instructions, I can, some companies can process the data. Okay, process the data. Carries out processing of PII on behalf of the controller and according to its instructions. So this is the processors. Okay, controller, processor. There are chances wherein the joint PII controllers can also be part of this, right? And there is a joint operations also can happen. Okay, automated, or because sometimes nowadays there is a data analytics or artificial intelligence, and there are a lot of automation things happens. Suppose if you are visiting a website wherein there is an automated process of they collect the jurisdiction, the IP addresses, and they will analyze backend. There is an analysis like this much traffic came from this point, so particular country. So some data is they're collecting, right? As an organization, they're collecting some data, and there is an automated system wherein the data is collected and processed and giving the results. Yeah, this much traffic, this particular point in time, this much traffic came from this. Sometimes if it is involved the PII, Now, as I mentioned, there are two things. One is the PII, personal identifiable information, and non-PII also, right? So the point number one, we need to understand the main three elements of this, okay, as per this PIMS. One is the owner, the individual who is the owner, okay, because every time as per the standard requirement, the principal interest has to be protected. When I am sharing my data with anyone, I have to have my rights also. I should know what is my rights. It is the responsibility of the controller who is taking my data. You should give me all the provisions. I will discuss that. The processor, once the controller, sometimes controller can be a processor also. There is no problem, because when I am taking the data, I also process internally, or otherwise I want to get some information. The processing facility I don't have it, so I can outsource to some other company. They are only processors. They cannot control what kind of a data they should take, right? So this is the very simple differentiation between the principals, the controller, and the processors. Okay. And here very here what I just 1 minute. Consent and choice. Consent and choice. This is what privacy principles. If you see some of the GDPR principles is also covered here. So that's what I'm saying. When these people are when they developed this kind of a standard, they thought very well, and they come up with the various things which will meet most of the regulatory things. But fundamentals concepts, they made it clear here. First thing, consent and choice. The person should have the choice whether to allow PII processing or not. So whenever if somebody is asking my data, I should give a chance whether I want to allow it or not. Even there is a lot of debate is happening here. If sometimes, there is no such kind of a choice. If I want to take their services, I have to accept whatever they are saying. So there is no choice given. So there is, it's like forcible, enforcing the consent. If you are not giving, I will not give you this. So as a user, what I will do? I will accept that consent, right? I mean, I'm giving, this is a forcible consent. So all these things, so far what we discussed, again, let me, refresh, because whatever earlier I discussed with you, that is the structure of the standard, because you have to go through the standard requirements one to one, because it's very difficult to explain one by one, but I given the entire, what is the structure. Now we are getting into the additional things which you might need to understand, what is how it your PMS may influence by various factors. So that is where the privacy principles comes. Purpose and legitimate and specification. What is the purpose? The purpose of processing must be legally comply with the law. Okay, I am collecting some data. If there is it's legally legally acceptable. I cannot process some data which is unethical. Right? So as an organization, when I am taking the data as a controller, I should know what is the purpose. I should tell the principal also, this is the reason I'm collecting your data. Okay, I'm collecting your data because of this reason. Okay, and there is a legitimacy and specification. Then collection of limitation. How much data I should collect? Oh, so, other person is giving so much data, so I am taking the data only. What kind of? There should be some limit necessary for the purpose. If I am supposed to do some particular activity, if I am supposed, for example, if there is a requirement of, I want to see how many people are actually attended whatever that visited our website. So basically, if the country of the origin, if I take, that is a purpose, right? I mean, the country of the origin or something like this. So if we am taking, more information, it is not the particular purpose. I'm unnecessarily collecting a lot of data, right? So I always limit that collections and data minimization. Okay, when I'm actually, when I'm giving data to some third parties, and I have to take care. That is also I need to consider. And the retention period, retention of the data. So after that data, how I can store it and destroy that.
that needs to be verified. All these things, consent, purpose, collection limitation, data minimization, retention, everything, when you are conducting the data privacy assessment or identifying the scope, so you need to ask these questions with respect to the specific processes. Okay, and accuracy and quality also. This is how actually you need to, these are the certain principles which is PMS is mentioned. Okay. Now, again, openness, transparency, definitely individual participation and access should be able to access and review as permitted by the law. Principles means the people who are actually provided that information to you. Okay. And the organization, because I'm outsourced, it doesn't mean that I can come out from a responsibility and accountability of any thing. So even I'm the controller, I am collected the data, I have taken the consent from the users, it is my full responsibility and accountability. Okay, whatever the legally, whatever the contractually obligations I am supposed to put it for those processing companies, I should put it. Okay. Information security, definitely without the security, the privacy cannot be achieved, as we are, from starting, we are discussing this. So definitely the information security controls needs to be there, and controls, audits, verifications to ensure PIA processing meets the requirement. So the privacy compliance is one of the part. Now, coming to the 27,001, this is already I have just explained to you. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 clauses is the, if you know the 27,001, these are the main clauses. Titles are this: contest of the organization, leadership, planning, support, operations, performance evaluation, where you can check internally how best the controls are implemented. There should be some internal reviews and etc. And if there is any problems, then the improvement. So these many clauses actually, in the PMS point of view, when you read the PMS directly, these are applicable. There is no specific PMS requirements are mentioned. It means just imagine only 5.4 and 5.2, there are two new requirements. Otherwise, the entire 27,001 is also applicable. You are already meeting a PMS requirement with respect to these classes. Okay, so that's the reason we mentioned it's very, very overlapped to two standards. If you have 27,000, it will be very easy. You just adopt the respective PMS specific requirements in the organization, and you get certified. As the same thing, 5 to 18, additional guidance which they are given as far as the PMS is concerned. Otherwise, already you must be having, if you are already 27,001 certified company, then you are already having the good systems in place, no doubt in that. Okay. Other than this 27,001 mapping, we need to further how to implement the PMS, because there are two things which are already we discussed. What is that? Implementation. The first step towards implementation, what PIA you have, okay, where it is located, who can access it. This you should have the very, very proper understanding about these things. Okay, what PIA you have, where it is located, who can access it. Okay. Then this is the implementation steps. Like maybe if some company wants to get certification or implement, then first of all they have to identify the scope and the PIA identification and the privacy impact assessment they're supposed to perform. Conduct the risk assessment and treatment to understand the different things, and privacy policies and procedures to be prepared. And basis on the risk, they should identify the controls and then implement the controls. And there should be an internal audit. That's what the performance evaluation which I mentioned. And then management review meetings, and get into the certification assessment and further improvement and maintenance. So this is how the implementation steps is involved. And this is very simple. How analysis, risk, confidentiality, responsibility, processing limitations. So this is what exactly we discussed. Identify controller requirements, identify processor requirements. If your organization is the controller, if your organization is the processor, then accordingly, what kind of requirements is additional for you? This is what you need to check. The purpose and lawful basis. This is also very important. What is the purpose of the collecting the data? Are you taking consent from them? Okay. or are you taking this, performance of a contract or legal obligation? Because of the legal obligation, you are taking the collecting this data or not. So like this, we need to understand the purpose, and whatever you are doing, it should be lawful basis. Determine document comply with the lawful basis for PIA processing, considering the purpose identified. Okay. Public interest task, legitimate. So basically, what we need to understand here, purpose, you should be clear with the purpose, why you require that particular data. Whatever purpose, it should be legally acceptable. That's what it is. Then the consent, it's a freely given, very explicitly which they are given or not. Okay. And specific, why you are taking this data, it should be clear in the consent document. Like privacy impact assessment, as I mentioned, it's a very systematic, extensive evaluation of the personal aspects based on automatic processing, reducing legal effects on the PA principles. And when you are actually processing the special categories like health data or something like this, you can do it large scale of processing also. You should have the conduct the process privacy impact assessment. And also the systematic monitoring of publicly accessible areas. Also, you need to have this privacy impact assessment. So generally, how the privacy impact assessment happens, just we touched upon here, prepare a plan properly, describe what kind of a data being accessed, what is the purpose, who are the stakeholders. You can take their, information flows and identify the privacy risk, identify the impact and likelihood, and treat the risk. So this is the privacy impact. Every element of privacy, how it get impacted. You have to consider various ways, but this is the overall. You should do a proper privacy impact assessment, and what kind of a contracts you must be having with the PA processors, and how you make sure they are also legally liable for their actions and everything. That is also you need to check. Then obligations to PTA, this is already we discussed lawful contract, how you are getting obligations. Very important here, the information to PA principles. So basically clear and easy to access. It should not be should not have any ambiguity or anything. So you should have it, proper clear information mechanisms. Further, providing mechanisms to withdraw or modify the consent. If somebody is actually has given some information to you, you should have proper arrangements to withdraw that also. Okay, and also as per the applicable legislation, how the principals can object. Okay. And also the PIA principal, the data subjects are PIA principal, they should have access to correct and erase the data also. And copy, if they ask you, you should be provisioned with the copy of the data, which you can share, you should share with them. Okay. This is also very important. You should have the proper mechanisms for that. Okay. And also you should clearly mention who is responsible to take request from the principals for any responsibilities. Also, it should be very clear within your organization. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is also very important. Privacy by design and privacy by default. Privacy by design, privacy by default thing. Limit collection, limit processing, and accuracy and quality. So this is something which whole life cycle we have to see. Okay, when you are actually implementing the privacy, it can be the privacy by design is something before creating the service or the product or the process. You should think about the privacy. Point number one, and accordingly you can design the systems. So it itself takes care of the privacy of the things. Once it is developed, then configuration can be performed to protect the privacy. That is privacy by default, what it's called. I will tell you, for example, one company, any company undertakes any particular processing personal data. Whenever they are implementing internal projects or product development or software development, they should consider the privacy in mind, data protection in mind. Okay. In practices, it means, for example, it means that the IT department or any other department that process personal data, they should ensure that privacy is built into the system during the whole life cycle of the systems or process. Okay. Privacy by design means basically once the product or service released for the use for the public, and the privacy setting should be applied by default. Privacy setting should be applied by default on the system without any manual input from the end user. So this is something like the privacy settings which we can see in the mobile phones, and by default there are certain settings they will create. Before that, while development, the design has to be there for this creating the settings. So this is how actually privacy by design, privacy by default. Okay. So without designing the specific features, it is very difficult, right? So this is what the privacy by design and privacy by default. And yeah, I mean retention periods, wherever we discussed this already, these certain things, what kind of a transmission controls, retention controls, okay, disposal, and very important. Sorry. Yeah. So basically here, if you see the 27001 NXREA controls, which I mentioned, like there are specific requirements from the PIMS point of view. So 27701, there is a mapping which has already given. So basically everywhere what is happens here, the privacy related aspects we just need to consider while developing the systems. For example, develop additional privacy policy, like 5.1.1 talks about the information security policy. So 6.2.1.1 talks about develop the privacy policy or augment ISMS policy to showcasing commitment to achieve the PIA legislative compliance. So that is what it is. As I mentioned, like 8.2.1 incorporate PIA within the existing classification policy. Now, so far, 27,000 talks about the information security classification policies wherein the data has to be assigned, etc. I mean, how to classify the data and how to identify the data, etc. So here actually while doing that you should think about the privacy also. Okay, like this every control wise they mentioned. So if you have the access to the PMS standard, probably you can go through the standard. So it is given every control wise what kind of a PMS with respect to the PMS you should implement specific controls. So this is all the controls are mentioned in the standard. And yeah, I mean, this is very long. And so this is basically, it's just for information purpose which are given. So every control wise, there is a mapping between the 27001 and PIMS. Wherever possible, they mentioned privacy to be included. So this is what the controls implementation. So by so far what we covered is basically like the structure of the standard and what is the expectations from the standard and what is the relationship between the PIMS and ISMS. And if you are already ISMS certified, it will be very easier for you to just take that specific privacy related points in the ISMS and get easily you can comply with the privacy. And also while implementing the privacy management system, you should consider the design of the privacy by design, privacy of the default, and also very important, you should provide certain privileges to the PIA principals, the person who is actually sharing the data with you. If you are a PIA controller, if you are a PIA processor, you have to have certain principles, you have to have certain systems, like as I mentioned, you should provision access to your PIA principals, and whenever they comes for any kind of queries, you should have a proper system in place to answer the queries. It's like RTI types, RTI types. Second one, third one is if the PA principals they wants to erase their data or modify data, you should provide such kind of a systems for them. And also you should have a proper clear purpose and lawfulness while collecting any data. So this is very cut short, yes, because this is a newly developed standard, so there is a lot of subjectives there apply. Probably, yeah. So this is what it is. So I would recommend, you people can go through the standard ones and and definitely it takes a little bit more time to cover all these requirements. Probably we will come up with the one continuous awareness session, okay, in future. So coming to the QRC, we are ISO 27001 and 27701 certification body, and also we are a PCI certification qualified assessor company, the payment card industry, PA qualified assessor companies, and SLC, the software security, software lifecycle assessor company, and also we are a certain empaneled company, and we providing the services like certification services as mentioned, the 27001, 27701 HIPAA compliance. You see, if you see here, that's what I mentioned, HIPAA compliance. It's not a certification. We cannot provide the certificate to HIPAA, GDPR. So this is what the difference, like that we are a pure audit firm and a compliance certification firm. So we are majorly working in the payment industry and BFSS sectors, and we do SWIFT CSCF assessment, SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3 assessment, and mainly predominantly we are working on the payment card industry standards. Also, we do perform the security services like VAPT, application testings, network security reviews, etc. And this is a customer success story, and we have the customers across global level, around 250 plus customers, in 25 plus countries, and start from the Europe, Middle East, Africa, America, and APAC and Africa regions. And thanks for attending this session. Thank you very much for everyone. And if you have any question and answers, I am ready to. Now it's time for, okay, it's already there. Out of the time, but however, I can just quickly, I can answer some questions here. My company is in okay. Oh, I see. The implementation of PMS is something like, it's not about only the cost, but PIMS give you the more reasons to be comply with the GDPR. GDPR, there is no certification. If you want to prove you are a GDPR compliant, there is no certificate for GDPR. It is a practice. So, but when it comes to the PIMS, it is giving you one structured way of implementing the things, and already since this company, your company is already certified for 27001, it will be very easy for you to adopt this PIMS. That's what my answer. Okay. Does automotive industry also need 27001 compliance? Yes, if you feel you are handling some sensitive information or some confidential information, you don't want somebody to get inside of your organization and steal the data, yes, you can implement 27001. That is mainly information security, information security standard. Yeah. Difference between the PCI and 27001. PCI is mainly I think my other colleague is already answered. Yes, PCI is mainly takes care of the security of the cardholder data, and 27701 it takes care of the privacy of the information, right? Privacy data. I think thank you very much for attending this session. Thanks everyone. If you have any specific questions, you must be having our email ID. You can drop an email. We can get back to you, appropriately. And thank you very much for attending. And yes, if somebody wants to touch base, the mail which you received, this particular the meeting request, you please reply to that. We will get back to you. If you have any questions, please. Thank you very much.